the angle. Look at the way she's got the angle set up. Oh my God,
Baszler! The 10 stiffest WWE wrestlers ever. Number 1, John Cena. No, wait, that's the wrong list. When we're talking about stiff in the ring, we're talking in wrestling terms as it refers to a wrestler working very snug or very hard hitting, where the strikes and moves appear or often appear to be more real or painful than usual. So let's start off with the real number 1, Low Ki. Now, there are a lot of things you can say about Low Ki. However, the former TNA star is without a doubt one of the stiffest wrestlers to step in the ring. Low Ki took professional wrestling very seriously, with the former TNA star mixing both wrestling and MMA. Before coming over to WWE, Low Ki was known for knocking out wrestlers. In fact, there's an infamous video of Low Ki knocking out a wrestler at an Evolve show with just one kick. The match still continued even though the guy was legitimately knocked out. We're wondering why Low Ki just didn't go into MMA for real, as his feet were more lethal than Steve Blackman's. Low Ki's realistic approach to the sport made him stand out as something special because he was a believable badass. Yeah, looks can be deceiving in wrestling. Number 2, Hardcore Holly. Now, they don't call him Hardcore Holly for nothing. The former hardcore champion made his name in WWE during the 90s, and one of the most notable things about Holly is just how stiff of a performer he really was in the ring. Well, frankly, it's because many consider him a huge backstage bully as well. But Hardcore Holly's tough persona always felt genuine because he brought an intensity and edge that many other wrestlers just simply didn't have. Though Hardcore Holly doesn't have any documented knockouts on his resume, the former WWE star had an infamous moment during an episode of Tough Enough. Holly made a special appearance and wrestled the Tough Enough performers. Every punch, kick, and clothesline could be felt through the TV screen, but his match against Matt Cappotelli is why this particular episode stands out the most. Hardcore Holly beat his ass from pillar to post, and there was a point where it genuinely seemed as if Holly knocked out the wrestler in the ring. Now, Holly admitted in past interviews that he's very stiff in the ring because he likes his moves to be believable without being real. But perhaps his moves were too real on Tough Enough, and Holly expressed his regret over the beating he gave Matt Cappotelli on the two-man Power Trip Wrestling podcast.
The thing is, I was just going out there and I was just doing what I normally do all the time. And see, in Matt's defense, he didn't know me. He didn't know how I wrestled and stuff like that. And I did not mean to kick him and hit him like I did with my boot, because my boot is what got him. If you watch the film, it's like he was flailing in the corner stuff, and my foot caught him, which accidents happen in wrestling, and I had no intentions of doing that, going in there and doing that to him whatsoever, despite what people at home sit there and think that I did on purpose that watch. Me and Matt are cool. I hate what he's going through now. It's terrible thing that he has to deal, because he's such a good guy, he's such a good person and a nice guy. I just hate that he's going through it.
Now, say what you want about Hardcore Holly, but he can take a beating as much as he can give one. The man broke his neck on live television, and he suffered one of the nastiest cuts ever seen in professional wrestling. So while he may be stiff, Holly is also a man who can take the punishment as much as he dishes it out. Number 3, Chyna. Now, in the cases of Low Ki and Hardcore Holly and most of the names on this list, they were stiff because they wanted to make wrestling look as real as possible. But in the case of the 9th wonder of the world, Chyna, unfortunately, she was pretty stiff because the former Intercontinental Champion wasn't that good of a wrestler. The WWE Hall of Famer is a name that is cemented in professional wrestling for eternity. Chyna broke down barriers for women, and she still remains the only woman to hold the men's Intercontinental title. But Chyna was still developing as an in-ring performer. Chris Jericho flat out stated that he didn't like working with the WWE Hall of Famer because of her inexperience.
Terrible.
Really?
She was terrible to work with. She wasn't good, but she thought she was. And she also was in a position where they were pushing her really big that she could beat up guys. Mm-hmm. She couldn't. I never got that credit. No one ever once said, "You're making her look good." It was the other side of the coin. Oh. I got in big trouble from working with her, because at one point, I remember when I first started working with her, Vince was like, "Don't treat her like a woman, treat her like a wrestler." And she was really stiff too, which means she worked very strong. Listen, and I'm not talking bad of her, I'm just telling the truth. So when we worked together, it was a solid fight in a lot of ways. And I remember one time she got a little bit of a black eye from me, and you would have thought I'd cut her arm off with a chainsaw. Like, I got in so much trouble, and I was like, fuck, like I didn't do it on purpose. But so it was a tough position for me to be in. It was my first real angle in the WWE, my first story. I mean, I did the best that I could, and I think her best matches that she ever had were with me. Hopefully prove something to the people that had to prove things to, but there was a lot of issues with working with her.
Although Chyna wasn't a top-level wrestler, she was certainly a tremendous character that managed to maintain her popularity throughout her WWE run. Number 4, JBL. JBL was another notorious bully behind the scenes. While the former WWE star got checked by veterans like Steve Blackman and Ken Shamrock, as Blackman legitimately knocked out the former WWE champion, it was reported that the former champion worked a very stiff style against the rookies. There's even rumors that Vince McMahon would force a wrestler to work with JBL as a punishment. Now, it's not surprising that JBL is a stiff worker in the ring. For most of his career, he had to play a beer-drinking badass with a take-no-prisoners attitude. JBL had spoken about being stiff and admitted to having two different clotheslines from Hells for guys he liked and guys he didn't like. Now, it's not clear if JBL started out wrestling stiff or if he developed that style along the way, but the former champion grew up in an area where being stiff was rather common amongst wrestlers. JBL has documented receipts from wrestlers as well, so the former WWE star didn't seem to have too much problem getting hit back like Hardcore Holly did. Number 5. Goldberg. Goldberg should be one of the least surprising names on this list. The WWE Hall of Famer was a former powerlifter and mixed martial artist who was thrown into the lion's den because WCW just liked his look. Goldberg was in the same category as Chyna, as he worked stiff because he didn't receive the proper training. It's also a big reason why Goldberg didn't work long matches for a long period of time. WCW managed to hide his weaknesses, though Goldberg's inexperience and recklessness would shorten a wrestler's career. Ever since that infamous kick at Starrcade 1999, Bret Hart has been shouting from the rooftop of how much he hates the former WCW World Heavyweight Champion. It was the stiff kick to the head that gave Hart a concussion and shortened his career. Goldberg was far from the worst wrestler on the planet, but he was a prime example of what could happen when you put a man inside a wrestling ring without too much training. Number 6. The Nasty Boys. Now, the Nasty Boys were one of the most popular tag teams in the mid-90s in WWE. They weren't really known for their wrestling, but they were certainly one of the most entertaining, which is why they had runs in WCW, NWA, and WWE. The duo of Brian Knobbs and Jerry Saggs were notorious backstage bullies, with various reports of the duo getting into fights against top names like Ken Shamrock, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall. In a match with Hall and Nash at a house show in '97, Jerry Saggs felt that the Outsiders were purposely working stiff, so Saggs returned the favor by knocking out some of Hall's teeth. Their match turned into a full-blown fistfight, with Saggs getting fired because of it. But Knobbs was no stranger to being stiff himself. He carried himself as a tough son of a bitch, with Knobbs being even so bold as to throw a racial slur at New Jack's way. He ended up getting knocked out for his troubles, as New Jack was not somebody to F with in the ring. Now, it's unknown why the Nasty Boys felt that they needed to work so stiff, but as we mentioned, the culture was quite different in the 80s and 90s, so it really wasn't a big deal then. Surprisingly, WWE gave Brian and Jerry a tryout match in 2007. They worked a match against Drew McIntyre and Dave Taylor, and the bout was considered a complete disaster. Most reports claim that Hobbs and Saggs were very stiff with the duo, and other reports state that the Nasty Boys didn't particularly take the audition very seriously, as they thought they had the same star power in the late 2000s. Whatever the case may be, their style was a good fit for Brian and Jerry during the era of wrestling, and even most of the guys wished that the former WWE Tag Team Champions took it easier on them. Number 7. Vader. Vader is a big man, so when you have a big guy like that wailing on you for a good minute, you'll be guaranteed to have some bruises once the match is all said and done. But Vader wasn't like the Nasty Boys. Though his powerful strikes and hard-hitting moves worked for Vader's character, many have described Vader as a teddy bear despite being a stiff worker. In fact, Road Dogg may have found the key to stopping Vader's stiffness. The WWE Hall of Famer recalled on the first episode of his Oh You Didn't Know podcast on working with Vader, and he describes getting his ass beat by this guy every time they stepped into the ring together. He recalls having a conversation with his brother, who stated that Road Dogg needed to get his respect. Getting Vader's respect meant being stiff right back at him. Road Dogg didn't believe it, but he got so fed up with Vader beating the snot out of him that Road Dogg clocked him good with a couple of fists right back. From then on, it was smooth sailing between the two. But in the case of Vader, it sounded as if the Hall of Famer needed to trust his opponents first. He was stiff, but safe. Vader's never been painted as a bad guy, but he had no qualms about giving a hard hit right back. Number 8. William Regal. Now, everyone's favourite Englishman doesn't hide his aggressive side. Regal has mentioned on an episode of Tough Enough that he hits people very hard in safe places. That means his chops will leave his opponent's chest bright red, or his uppercuts will have an extra Mortal Kombat-like oomph behind them. Regal is a technical wrestler like Bret Hart, and he can get into wars with some of the best strikers in the world, but he can also out-grapple most names in the business. I'll just ask Bill Goldberg. On the February 9th, 1998 edition of Nitro, these two had a very infamous match. Remember when we said that Goldberg's stiffness is due to his inexperience? Well, that inexperience played a big factor here as Regal outsmarted the former WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Now, this was supposed to be a squash match that continued to show off the dominance and strength of Goldberg, but Regal was reportedly told to have a competitive match with a WCW star. Regal made Goldberg look like a complete amateur, locking him in holds that he couldn't get out of and striking him pretty hard with punches and uppercuts. Goldberg managed to win the match, but it killed his mystique. Regal was fired shortly after this match, and he toned down his stiffness when he got to the WWE, but he didn't hold back against other stiff wrestlers like Finlay or Chris Benoit. Number 9. The Dynamite Kid. What made Tom Billington, aka the Dynamite Kid, different was his style as an in-ring performer. He was a hard-hitting, fast-paced high flyer who went out of his way to master his craft in professional wrestling. In some ways, that was a detriment to the former WWE star as the Dynamite Kid pushed his body past his breaking point. The Dynamite Kid may have been one of the best wrestlers in the world, but he was considered a bully in and outside of the ring. Plenty of wrestlers didn't like working with him because his stiffness would actually hurt them. There was an instant where Mick Foley suffered a dislocated jaw because of the former WWE star. The Hall of Famer talked about the incident himself on Steve Austin's Broken Skull sessions, where Foley was spun in the air by the Dynamite Kid and then he was hit with a hard clothesline. Billington laughed at the situation. Many people believe that he took pleasure in hurting people in the ring. But Foley isn't the only man who had the displeasure of dealing with Kid. Bret Hart, Jacques Rougeau, and even his own wife didn't particularly have good things to say about him. It's not exactly clear why Billington felt that he needed to be a bully in the ring, but the former WWE star was dealing with alcoholism and drug abuse, so it's possible that his substance issues played a big factor in the way he treated people. And number 10, King Kong Bundy. Now, Hulk Hogan had his ribs injured during a match against King Kong Bundy. Hillbilly Jim said that Bundy was killing him every time they were in the ring. There's not many guys had bad things to say about Bundy as a person, but the former WWE star didn't have a problem holding back whenever he was in the ring. Then again, when your name is King Kong Bundy, it makes sense why Bundy was such a stiff worker. His job was supposed to be imposing and scary, and Bundy's style complemented his character perfectly. Despite Hogan injuring his ribs during their feud, the former WWE champion has stated that it was one of his favorite rivalries. The big man may have never won any titles in WWE, but he certainly made a lasting impression as he was one of the better workers as a big man, even though he gave Hogan hell in the ring. But there you have it, folks. 10 of the stiffest WWE wrestlers ever. Be sure to leave your comments down below. I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.